In a chilling tale of the supernatural, a young woman finds herself haunted by a restless spirit. Desperate to break free from its grasp, she embarks on a perilous quest to sever the ghostly bond, but in her bid for freedom, she unwittingly steps into a realm beyond our own. The tube train rattled through the underground labyrinth of London, its carriages whispering secrets of a bygone era. Clara, a young woman with striking hazel eyes and auburn hair, tied back in a loose bun, sat huddled in her seat. It was just another late evening, the kind she had grown accustomed to, yet something felt unsettlingly different tonight. As the train whisked past dimly lit stations, Clara's thoughts were a swirl of workplace drama and weekend plans. Her fingers danced over the screen of her phone, but her mind was elsewhere, lost in the hum of the carriage. The train lurched into a particularly dark stretch of tunnel, and Clara looked up, her eyes momentarily meeting those of a stranger sitting across from her. He was an odd fellow, dressed in a somewhat outdated fashion. With a bowler hat resting on his knee, his eyes deep and penetrating, he seemed to hold 1,000 untold stories. Feeling a bit unnerved, Clara had turned her gaze to her phone, but a sudden chill ran down her spine. She could feel the stranger's gaze still fixed on her, almost as if he were trying to communicate something urgent, something dire. The train screeched to a halt at the next station, and the door slid open with a hiss. A few passengers disembarked, and a few others boarded, but the man in the bowler hat remained seated, his eyes never leaving Clara. As the train resumed its journey, he leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper, yet clear over the clatter of the train. "I don't mean to alarm you," he said in a tone that suggested the exact opposite. "But there's something you should know." Clara, feeling a mix of curiosity and apprehension, reluctantly met his gaze. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" she asked, her voice tinged with caution. "No," he replied, "but I know something about you. Something you are not aware of, yet." Clara frowned, unsure how to respond to such a bizarre statement. She glanced around, hoping for some form of distraction or escape, but the other passengers seemed oblivious to their conversation, engrossed in their own worlds of books, music, and phones. "You're not alone on this journey," the man continued, his eyes darkening with a serious intensity. "There is a presence with you, a spirit from the past. It's attached itself to you, and I fear its intentions are not benign." Clara's heart skipped a beat. Was this some kind of joke, a prank? She looked at the man, trying to discern any sign of deceit, but his expression was grave. "I don't believe in ghosts," Clara said, her voice firm, even though a part of her trembled at the thought. The man sighed, a look of genuine concern etching in his face. "I understand your skepticism, but please be vigilant. The spirit is a victim of a tragic accident that happened here years ago." The train pulled into the next station, and Clara stood up hastily. I need to get off here," she lied, eager to escape the unnerving conversation. As she stepped off the train, she stole one last glance at the mysterious man. He dipped his hat, an old-fashioned gesture that somehow seemed fitting, and whispered, "Be careful, miss. The echoes of the past are not always just echoes." The train doors closed, and Clara was left alone on the platform, her heart racing. She tried to shake off the man's words, telling herself it was just the ramblings of a stranger. But as she made her way out of the station, into the night, she couldn't shake the feeling that something unseen was following her, a shadow from the underground depths. The evening after her unsettling encounter on the tube, Clara met her friend Emily at a bustling cafe in the heart of the city. The place was alive with the chatter of people unwinding after a long day, and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the sounds of clinking glasses and laughter. Clara, still shaken from the previous night's experience, was grateful for the normalcy of the cafe and the company of Emily, who had been her confidant since the university days. They found a cosy corner and settled in, ordering the usual, a latte for Clara and a cappuccino for Emily. As they chatted about their day, Clara felt the weight of her encounter lift slightly. Emily's vibrant personality and infectious laughter were just the remedy she needed. They reminisced about the old college days, and for a moment, Clara forgot about the mysterious man and his ominous warning. However, the lightness of the evening was short-lived. As they were laughing over an old joke, Emily suddenly winched and clutched her arm. "Ouch, Clara, did you just scratch me?" she asked, looking at her friend with a mix of surprise and pain. Clara was taken back. "What? No, Emily, I didn't. Why would I do that?" Emily rolled up her sleeve, revealing a set of red scratch marks on her arm. They looked fresh and oddly precise, as if made by human nails. "Then how did these get here?" Emily demanded, her voice tinged with accusations. Clara was at a loss for words. She knew she hadn't touched Emily, yet the marks were undeniably there. I don't know, Em, I swear I didn't do it," she stammered, her mind racing back to the man warning about the spirit. Emily's expression hardened. "This isn't funny, Clara. If you're playing some sort of weird joke on me, it's not cool." Her voice was rising, attracting curious glances from nearby patrons. Clara felt a cold shiver run down her spine. She wanted to explain, to tell Emily about the ghost and the medium's warnings, but how could she? It sounded absurd even in her own head. "Emily, please believe me, I didn't do this. I would never hurt you," Clara pleaded, her eyes wide with sincerity. But Emily was not convinced. She grabbed her purse, her movements quick and agitated. "I think I should go. This is too weird for me, Clara." Clara reached out, trying to stop her, but Emily shrugged her off and stormed out of the cafe, leaving Clara alone, surrounded by murmuring customers and a growing sense of dread. As she sat there, bewildered and heartbroken, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that the mysterious presence the medium had spoken of was more than just a ghost story. It was real, and it was affecting her life in ways she couldn't have imagined. With a heavy heart, she realized she had to uncover the truth behind the spirit's attachment to her before it caused any more harm. In the wake of her unsettling experience, Clara felt a deep need for a connection, something familiar and grounding. She found herself reaching out to Tom, her ex-boyfriend, with whom she had parted on amicable terms. Tom had always been a source of comfort and understanding, and Clara hoped that spending time with him might bring some normality back into her life. Tom was surprised but receptive to her call. They agreed to meet and spend a day together, catching up and revisiting some of their favourite spots around the city. As they strolled through the bustling streets, they visited the quaint little bookshop they both loved, and shared a meal at their favourite old cafe. Clara felt a sense of ease she hadn't felt in days. As the day turned into evening, they found themselves back at Clara's apartment, sinking into the familiar comfort of the couch. They talked, laughed, and reminisced, the warmth of their shared history filling the room. Eventually, the conversation dwindled, and a comfortable silence settled between them. The emotional exhaustion of the past few days caught up with Clara, and she found herself drifting off to sleep, her head resting gently against Tom's shoulder. Tom, also lulled by the quiet ambience and the warmth of Clara's presence, fell asleep. The apartment was quiet, save for the soft ticking of the clock and their synchronized breathing. The peace, however, was short-lived. Tom was jolted awake by a sensation of hands wrapping tightly around his neck. He gasped for air, his hands clawing at the invisible force that seemed to be strangling him. Pain surged through his body as he struggled to break free from the unseen grip. Clara woke up to Tom's frantic movements and gasps. Confused and scared, she tried to help him, her own heart racing with fear. Tom, what's happening? Tom managed to free himself from the invisible hold and scrambled away from Clara, his eyes wide with shock and fear. He turned to her, his breath ragged, and pointed to his neck, where red marks were beginning to form. Clara, did you? His voice was a mix of disbelief and accusation. No, Tom, I swear I didn't. Clara's voice trembled, her mind reeling. She remembered the scratch marks on Emily's arm and the ominous warning from the man on the tube. The realization hit her like a wave. Spirit was not just a passive presence, it was actively causing harm. Tom, his expression a mix of fear and confusion, stood up abruptly. I don't know what's going on here, Clara, but I'm not into this kind of thing. His voice was strained, a hint of fear underlying his words. Clara reached out to him, desperation in her voice. Please, Tom, you have to believe me, I didn't do this, there's something else. But Tom was already heading for the door, his steps quick and determined. I'm sorry, Clara, I can't deal with this, he said, not looking back as he left the apartment. Clara sat there, alone and frightened, the gravity of her situation sinking in. The spirit was not just a haunting presence, it was a dangerous entity that was affecting her and those close to her. She knew she couldn't ignore it any longer. She had to find out why this spirit had attached itself to her and how to stop it before it caused any more harm. The journey ahead was uncertain and terrifying, but Clara knew she had no other choice. The answers lay somewhere in dark history of the tube, and she had to uncover them. Clara sat in the dimly lit living room of her flat, the events of the past few days swirling in her mind like a relentless storm. The eerie encounters, her friends' reactions, and the unexplainable physical attacks had left her feeling isolated and terrified. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she grappled with the reality that her life had taken a turn into the inexplicable. Exhausted and emotionally drained, she eventually succumbed to the restless sleep of her sofa. In the dead of night, a sudden chill seeped into the room, rousing Clara from an uneasy slumber. It felt as though icy fingers were gripping her, pulling at her with a ghostly force. She gasped and sat up frantically, looking around the dark room, but no one was there. The air was unnaturally cold, and an oppressive sense of fear hung heavy in the atmosphere. Desperate for answers, Clara made a decision. She needed to confront this nightmare head-on. Wrapping herself in a coat, she left her flat and hurried through the silent streets towards a tube station. The city seemed different in the night, more ominous, as if hiding secrets in the shadows. As she descended into the tube station, her heart pounded with a mix of fear and determination. The platform was deserted, save for the flickering lights and the distant rumble of an approaching train. She stepped onto the train, her eyes scanning the empty carriages. Then she saw him, the mysterious man from before, sitting calmly in the same carriage. He looked up as she entered, his eyes meeting hers with an eerie sense of recognition. I've been waiting for you, he said, his voice steady and somber. Clara approached him cautiously, her mind racing with questions. How did you know I'd be here? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. The man sighed, a look of solemnity crossing his face. I knew, because the spirit that haunts you is restless. It's escalating its actions, which means it's desperate for something. I sense its unrest. I knew it would drive you to seek answers. Clara sat opposite him, her hands trembling. Who are you? How do you know about this spirit? My name is Edward, he began, his gaze fixed on hers. I'm a medium. I have a connection with the other side, a gift that allows me to see and feel what others cannot. This spirit, this entity that follows you, is tied to a tragic event that occurred on these tracks many years ago. Clara listened, her heart pounding in her chest. Edward's words were like pieces of a puzzle she had been desperately trying to solve. The spirit was once a passenger, just like you, Edward continued. An accident happened on this line, a collision that claimed many lives, including that of the spirit. But its soul couldn't move on. trapped in the echoes of its final journey. But why me? Why has it attached itself to me? Clara asked, a mix of fear and confusion in her voice. Edward leaned forward, his expression grave. Sometimes spirits latch onto someone who they feel they have a connection with, or who reminds them of something from their life. It's not always logical or fair, but in your case, I believe there's something about you that resonates with the spirits. Clara felt a chill run down her spine. The idea that she was unwittingly bound to a tormented soul was both terrifying and heart-wrenching. What does it want? How can I end this? She asked, her voice tinged with desperation. Edward looked at her with a mix of empathy and resolve. To free yourself and the spirit, you need to help it complete its journey. You must uncover the truth of the accident, understand the spirit's story, and help it find peace. It's a difficult path, but it's the only way to stop the haunting. Clara nodded, a newfound determination rising within her. She was no longer just a victim of these hauntings. She was now a key to resolving a restless spirit's anguish. With Edward's guidance, she would delve into the dark history of the tube, confront the echoes of the past, and seek to bring peace to the spirit that had so dramatically entered her life. Clara spent the following days immersed in research, delving deep into the archives of the city's history, searching for anything related to the tragic tube accident. She visited the local library, scrolled through countless online databases, and even spoke to historians specializing in the city's transport history. Each piece of information she gathered felt like a step closer to unraveling the mystery that had entangled her life. One evening, as she sifted through a digital archive of old newspapers and photographs, a particular image caught her eye. It was a black and white photo of an old woman, her face marked by time and experience, but with a kind and gentle expression. The caption underneath read, "Victim of the tube tragedy, renowned medium on journey to visit son." Clara felt an inexplicable pull towards the image of the old woman. Perhaps it was her status as a medium that resonated with Clara, given her own recent encounters with Edward. Or maybe there was something deeper, an unseen thread connecting them across time. Clara studied the woman's face, wondering about her life, her gift, and the son she was set to visit on that fateful day. Driven by a newfound purpose, Clara dug further into the woman's story. Her name was Eliza Bennett, a respected medium in her community, known for her kind heart and her ability to communicate with the spirit world. The more Clara read about Eliza, the more she felt a strange kinship with her. Her research eventually led her to an old address, one linked to Eliza's son. It was a long shot, but Clara felt compelled to follow this lead. She needed to know more, to understand the connection between Eliza and the haunting presence that had disrupted her life. The next day, Clara found herself once again on the tube, her heart heavy with anticipation and anxiety. She wondered if she was getting closer to the answers she sought, or if she was merely chasing shadows. The train moved through the tunnels, a reminder of the tragic history that lay hidden in its depths. As she reached the address, an old Victorian house in a quiet part of the city, Clara felt a surge of nervous energy. The house looked well maintained, but carried an air of the past, its walls holding stories and secrets of its own. Taking a deep breath, Clara approached the door and rang the doorbell. Her mind raced with questions. Who would answer? What would she say? Was she ready to face whatever truth lay behind this door? The door creaked open. An elderly man appeared, his face marked with lines of age and eyes that held a gentle curiosity. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice soft yet clear. Clara hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Hello, my name is Clara. I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm looking for information about Eliza Bennett. I believe she was your mother?" The man's expression shifted, a mix of surprise and deep, unspoken understanding crossing his features. "Eliza Bennett was my mother," he confirmed. "Why are you asking about her now, after all these years?" Clara took a deep breath, ready to share her story, to reveal the haunting journey she had been on, and to hopefully find the key to unraveling the mystery of the restless spirit that had brought her to this very doorstep. The man, introducing himself as Michael, Eliza's son, led Clara into the old Victorian house. The interior was a blend of past and present, with antique furnishings casting long shadows in the dim light. Michael offered her a seat in the living room, a space that felt like a capsule of a bygone era. As they sat, Michael began to recount the story of his mother, Eliza Bennett. He spoke of a family rift, sparked by his marriage to a woman whom Eliza had disapproved of, leading to years of silence between them. His wife had passed away under mysterious circumstances, and after much soul-searching, Michael had reached out to his mother to reconcile. They had planned to meet for the first time in years on the day of the tragic accident. "If what you're saying is true, that my mother's spirit is with you," Michael said, his eyes locking with Clara's, "then she might be able to communicate through us. But I'll need your help." Clara, driven by a mix of desperation and the hope that this could finally end her haunting, agreed to assist. She was wary, but felt she had no other choice. Michael instructed her to sit in a chair in the center of the room, and he began to prepare for what he described as a channeling session. As Clara sat, a sense of unease crept over her. Michael's demeanor had changed. There was an intensity in his eyes that hadn't been there before. He began to chant in a low, rhythmic tone, the words unfamiliar and unsettling to Clara. Suddenly, the room grew colder, and Clara felt a presence envelop her. It was as if icy fingers were reaching into her very soul. She tried to stand, tried to break free, but her body wouldn't respond. She was paralyzed, trapped in her own body, as an external force began to take control. Michael's chanting grew louder, and he began to laugh, a chilling sound that echoed through the room. "Yes, Mother, come through. Take this vessel. Return to us." Clara's mind raced with panic. This was a trap, a sinister plot to use her as a conduit for Eliza's spirit to return to the living world. She fought with every ounce of her being, trying to push the invading presence out of her mind and body. Michael's laughter continued, a twisted symphony to the macabre scene unfolding. "You thought you were helping, but you've only helped us bring her back. My mother, the medium, will live again through you." As the struggle intensified, Clara's vision began to blur, the edges of the room melting into darkness. She could feel Eliza's spirit, strong and determined, wrestling for dominance over her own consciousness. In this moment of despair, Clara's thoughts turned to Edward, the medium from the tube. She wished for his guidance, for his strength to help her in this battle for her very soul. She concentrated on her own will, her spirit, trying to summon the strength to resist the possession. The room spun, the air crackled with an unseen energy, and Clara let out a defiant scream, a last stand against the darkness that sought to claim her. The battle between the living and the dead raged within her, a fight for control, a fight for survival. In the eerie living room, where the air was thick with the scent of old books and forgotten memories, Clara's body stood up abruptly, a smile spreading upon her face. But it wasn't her smile. It was something foreign, something sinister. "Free!" The voice that emerged was not Clara's. It was laced with triumph and malice, the voice of Eliza Bennett. The son, Michael, clapped his hands in glee. "Mother, we did it! You're back!" His face was alight with a twisted joy, a son reunited with his mother in the most unnatural way. Eliza, now in control of Clara's body, stretched out her arms. reveling in her newfound physicality. "I have conquered death," she declared, in her voice echoing around the room. "Now I shall conquer life." Meanwhile, Clara's spirit found itself in an ethereal version of the tube, a world shrouded in a dense, dreamlike fog. The outlines of people were mere shadows, flickering in and out of focus. She felt disorientated, her mind struggling to grasp her new reality. As she attempted to move, Clara realized she was a mere wisp of her former self, a ghostly presence in a world that was both familiar and utterly alien. She tried to call out, to reach for help, but her voice was nothing more than a whisper lost in the void. In desperation, Clara reached out and managed to grasp onto somebody, a passenger who was oblivious to the spectral hand clinging to them. Her touch was light, barely perceptible, yet it was a connection to the physical world she so desperately sought to return to. At that moment, Clara heard a voice she recognized. It was Edward, the medium who had first warned her of the spirit. He was speaking to the person she had unwittingly attached herself to. "I must warn you." Edward's voice was serious, tinged with a hint of sadness. "A spirit has attached itself to you. It's lost, confused, seeking to return to the world it knew." The person, unaware of the ghostly drama unfolding around them, looked around nervously, a sense of unease settling over them. Clara realized the tragic irony of her situation. She, who had once been warned of a spirit's attachment, was now the spirit, clinging to an unsuspecting passenger. In a quest to rid herself of Eliza's haunting, she had become the very thing she feared. The train moved through the tunnels, a spectral vessel, carrying lost souls and unfinished stories. Clara's spirit lingered, a silent, invisible presence, a whisper in the underground. She had become an echo in the very depths she had once travelled as a living, breathing human. And so, the tube carried on, a conduit for the living and the dead, each on their own journey, each with their own story, as the cycle of hauntings and warnings continued in the shadows of the underground. And if you're still looking to fulfill your thirst for more horror, don't forget to check out this next video, unless of course you are frozen with fear already.